Good morning, evening, afternoon, wherever you are in the world. Thanks for joining us. I'm RObb, for those of you that don't know me, and welcome to our weekly Mass Participation World series of webinars. Today, the new normal: what features and functionality will registration platforms need as we move out beyond this? And before I get underway with a couple more introductions and things, I'm just going to quickly throw a poll in there so that we get a sense of who's with us. So just putting a poll out, which was there a moment ago, just disappeared before I introduced the panelist. Sorry, there we are, just to get a sense, if you wouldn't mind calling that in whilst I introduce our esteemed panelists today. Matt Bisset, Chief Everything Officer, register now in, we were talking before, fairly cold Melbourne, 0 degrees in the morning. Welcome, Matt, from Australia.
Hi, Chris. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Pierre Duvelleroy, founder of njuko from Biarritz in France. Thank you for giving up your surfing and coming and joining us, Pierre.
Yeah, thank you for having me as well, Chris, and delighted to be with you guys today.
Thank you so much. And the early starter calling in from Dallas in the US, Toby Green, Vice President Endurance from Active Network. Welcome, Toby. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Chris. Great to see you. Great to see you, Matt, Pierre. Awesome to be on the phone and talking about the future. Hopefully it's positive, or more positive than the last couple of months.
Yeah, certainly. We were talking before we came on, New Zealand opening up. I was talking to someone there. They had their first rugby matches this weekend. They got 35,000 tickets sold already for the match in Auckland on Sunday. So hopefully it's not too long before that's 35,000 people participating in events somewhere, mass participation events somewhere in the world. Just quickly, a little bit of housekeeping, please stay mute. Questions, I have the chat box and the Q&A box up, so please feel free to be putting questions in either of those as we go through. I'll basically do my best to, in between asking questions of the panelists and facilitating the conversation, see how many of those we can answer. We've allocated an hour for this evening. What typically happens is that we do have a fair few questions, and what I will do is, to stick to time, we'll do a quick summary wrap up on the hour, and then if there are a bunch of questions that we haven't managed to get to, we might stay for another 5 or 10 minutes and see how many of those we can answer. And if we can't get them answered live, we'll do our best to try and get them answered from the panelists online or something like that. I'll just share the results of that poll, as expected, mostly from the mass participation sector, a few from meetings and exhibitions, a few from corporate as well. So I'll share those in the panel there. We are hopefully, I was trying to record this on Facebook. It didn't seem to be playing ball, so I'll try and get have a go at that again. So once we get underway, for some reason it wouldn't totally bring it on, but hopefully we can get that happening. So hopefully recorded there. I am also recording this, so it'll be live on the Mass Participation World YouTube channel, and you'll be able to pick up the recording there. And whilst I just quickly talk about a couple of other things, I'm going to throw one other poll in here just to get a sense of within the industry where we're coming from in terms of what we've got an idea of the industry sector, but what services you provide. My sense is that we've got a lot of event organizers, but just to get a sense of that. Whilst I just quickly talk about a couple of other initiatives which quite a lot of you here are part of, which happen on a weekly basis, but just for those of you that might be new on the call, every Monday we have a Strength in Numbers call, which is just an industry chat room which I host on Zoom, 4:30 p.m. Singapore time. We used to do this twice a day. I've just moved it to once a day for a number of reasons now, just limited bandwidth, primarily my issue. Then I also have, which some of you have seen, some of you have been on, the Aid Station. So we're just about tomorrow to release edition 45 of that. So for 9 weeks, we've been pumping them out 5 a week. Pierre was on that. A number of other people have been on it. And fundamentally, it's 15 to 20 minute interviews from all over the world with people in the industry. Had a fascinating week. Today, I recorded someone from Lagos, from the Lagos Marathon, someone from Cairo, and someone from Kuwait went live today. And I also had Joanne, who's on the call from Ireland, who will be featured tomorrow. So been getting great feedback. If you've got anybody who you think would be a great guest on that, please let me know. And then every Thursday, these masterclasses and webinars. And next week, we've got a really exciting one. Not saying that tonight's not going to be exciting, but as we're aware, there's plenty of alliances that are forming around the world. The AMSI one in Australia, hosting a webinar with them tomorrow to share, and Matt, I know, is on the executive that. We will have Kyle McLaughlin, who heads up the endurance events. They're not called Alliance, sorry, I'm getting it wrong. Toby, you'll know. Coalition, that's the word I'm looking for. Hoping to have someone from a London coalition. There's a coalition alliance in Thailand and possibly someone from Canada. And what I'm trying to do here is bring together as much of what's happening across the world, sharing knowledge with the hope that we can all be helping each other to get back on the roads and bikes and everything as soon as possible, and figured if we can be bringing those coalitions, alliances together to share what they're doing to lobby governments for funding, for reopening and so on, we can all benefit. So so that's going to be next Thursday, 6 p.m., so an hour earlier than today, and across the world with that group of people. Any questions that you may have, please send directly to me, chris@chrisrobb.asia. Connect with me on LinkedIn or on the Mass Participation World Facebook page, which is typically where everything gets published, all of these things that are happening. And then I guess moving on to what we're going to be talking about tonight, there's kind of 7 key areas that we're going to try and address over the next sort of 55 minutes or so that are left, and talking about socially distancing events and what roles registration platforms might play in that. We're going to talk about price elasticity, entry fees. We'll touch on virtual events and how they may or may not. We had a whole webinar on that, so we're not going to dwell on it for too long, but specifically around how that may work from a perspective of what's the role of registration platforms. I think a really key one, participant engagement, so CRM, marketing automation, how you engage with participants around expos or not as we move forward in the new normal. I guess integration of third-party elements within websites, so things like insurance and the reassurance that gives people, the charity element around it, financial tools and measures, and then terms and conditions as one of the other areas that we're going to touch. So why don't we move straight into it, and I'm going to put another poll in whilst we start asking questions, just to get a sense, and that poll's going to be around how many of you manage your own registrations and how many of you use third party. But let's kick off talking about socially distanced events, and given that you're at the top of the picture there, Matt, we might start with you in terms of, how you see registration platforms playing a role in facilitating some of the requirements of social distancing.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Chris. Look, it's a really interesting question, and it's a question that is moving really quickly. And a week ago, we were having discussions with lots of event organisers in New Zealand, for example, about how we manage socially distance and control elements and control start groups, and how we set up events for them to be able to find that. And then a week later, we're in a position where they have no restrictions whatsoever. And the nature of this situation is changing so quickly that it's nearly impossible to predict exactly what's going to happen in any parts of the world. And I think it's very different in each jurisdiction. But I think that there will be, in certain parts of the world, and probably more so maybe than where we operate, there will be a significant requirement to be managing staged starts, staged areas, staged events, to be able to try and get the volume of people through an event anywhere close to what we used to, and being able to manage that process through the registration system is going to be key going forward. I don't know if there is a silver bullet answer to that question, because it's changing so quickly on a nearly a daily basis.
It is indeed. What we've come across, and I think is good tips, from other events, is some events are now asking, mandatory questions around start waves. and they've got different criteria to get you into a start wave, but that's fundamental to to be able to create social distancing. And we also have a few events that have done some cool things around bib pickup, so you actually have to pick a time, like a 15-minute interval in which you have to come and pick your bib number. And I think these are like very simple features, because you could do that in your registration form, but super useful for for social distancing. Just like you said, Matt, I agree with you. Things are changing so quickly that it's hard to adapt. But bib number pickup, start waves, these are like good, easy, simple tools to put in place to create some sort of social distancing.
Yeah, you're bang on, I think. But there's, to add to both of what you're saying, if I was an event organizer out there, I wouldn't necessarily be worrying about asking participants to choose when they want to come and pick up a packet now, which start wave they want to start in. You may have a lot of registrations, you may have a limited number of registrations. And so, there are tools available for you to allow to, automatically assign, waves, start waves or corrals at a later date. As Pierre was indicating, ask people to come back to your website, to log into their portal and choose when they want to come and do packet pickup. If they want to change their packet pickup time because their travel or their parenting or their childcare duties have changed. There's been some examples in the United States of some very, very small events taking place that are extremely socially distanced. It's great to see the innovation out there. It's not practical. It's more of a case of the eager runners trying to get back. I think everybody on the call would agree that it's the sentiment from runners and athletes and participants has been incredible in terms of a willingness to wait and a willingness to work with the event organizer. And they're hungry to get back out there on the streets, in the fields, in the mountains. That's for sure. Chris, to answer, I think, a slightly alternative direction of the question, there are, the sales of from our side, and I know from some of my competitors, sales of products such as like virtual goodie bags, virtual event bags, has gone actually through the roof. Not enough to sort of satisfy the loss of revenue elsewhere within the business, but it's sort of indicative that event organizers are planning to move all of their goodie bags virtual to fulfill their sponsor obligations. They are talking about how to leverage applications to engage both consumers as well as spectators as well as runners in terms of dynamic communication. If they don't have text messaging services, they may not have everybody's telephone numbers. There's lots of different tools, I think, already available within the toolkit of our three organizations. And what we, Hank he leads our client services and client services team worldwide. And what he's been spending a lot of time doing is talking to customers about what's already in your toolkit, whether you're working with njuko or Register Now or Active. There's tons of stuff in there. And we've been doing surveys on product usage for years. And we really want people to take a stop, look back, what's in the toolkit? What can I leverage that I've already got here? It's free. How can I better put on an event when they return to racing?
Yeah, you're making a great point on the virtual goodie bags. I think this is fundamental, and this is a great opportunity, also a challenge for events and sponsors, of course. But I think this is a big deal, and it's probably one of the rare opportunities that we've got with COVID-19. We can go more digital, and virtual goodie bags is a perfect example of that.
Yeah.
So anybody out there who never did it, it's coupons, it's vouchers, it's your race program that you can download and watch on your phone and stuff. So this is all these stuff that we can put digital and that you can use to engage your participants, not just at once when they come to the expo, but create different touch points between the moment they register and the moment they show up. Because that leads to another thing that we should talk about today is the expos. Well, hopefully things will get better, but expos at the moment, are very tricky. Like this is very complex. How can you drive traffic in business in expos at the moment? So the virtual goodie bag is, for me, like it's fundamental in your tomorrow strategic, you know.
Yeah, it has to be from a point of registration to post-event tool, and I think previous users of those products were very focused around event weekend or event week. And Pierre, you're bang on, right? Users 3 or 4 months to send, engage communications. There's lots of really amazing, cost-efficient tools out there.
You're absolutely right, and you mentioned something fundamental. It's virtual goodie bags have a huge impact before the event, but you can also use them after the event and put some rewards in there. It's another way to engage in a more customized way with your audience, you know? Like you could reward people who achieve their goals. So you could use your registration form to say, okay, what's your estimated finishing time? Well, we'll have a gift for you if you crush this time. You know, for example, that's a good way to engage, you know, with your athletes. And you know, our 3 techs can do all that, no worries at all.
Yeah.
The interesting part around that is going to be the challenge of event organizers having the foresight
Matt,
to.
you wanted to...
Sorry?
Go ahead, sorry.
That's all right. Sorry, I think the interesting part around that is us taking event organizers on the journey to be able to understand what they potentially can collect and therefore reward, and how they actually have that conversation with a commercial partner, and how they can actually commercialize that opportunity of the data they're collecting, or the posing the right questions to actually provide a benefit for a sponsor to commercially benefit from that. I totally agree. I think the expo proposition is going to be something that doesn't exist anymore, and how that commercial benefit that sponsors previously have got needs to be replaced. I think that's going to be a very interesting conversation for event organizers going forward.
And so again, and this is, you know, a theme that's come up almost every week, is this collaboration opportunity. It's a matter of sitting around a table together, working to find solutions with sponsors, with the race organizers and the platform working together. And you seem to make the point that Toby, I think, there's lots of tools out there already, and a lot of the organizers are not using the tools, maybe don't realize that they're there. So that opportunity for more education, more collaboration, it's not necessarily a matter of platforms having to create a whole bunch of new tools. And what was interesting, I mean, you obviously, I don't know if you saw the slide there, but I think 28% of people manage their own registration. So, you know, this will be an interesting time. You know, my sense is that maybe it's smaller events that manage their own, but is this going to be a time when smaller events are going to say, well, we don't have that functionality now, and to be able to create that maybe means that it's now an opportunity to start moving to one of the bigger providers that's going to give them more flexibility and functionality. Is that a kind of conversation that you're already starting to have, where people are saying we're recognizing that we maybe don't have the functionality with an in-house built system, and it's better to come and speak to one of the bigger players?
Who's directed at this?
Whoever wants to take it, you can take it, Toby.
I don't think COVID-19 has accelerated that conversation, right? And you know, we understand why people choose to do it in-house, and you know, of course, we want people to use our platforms. We're commercial people, right? Matt and Pierre own and run their own businesses, and you know, I'm lucky to lead one of the legacy great businesses in the industry. Look, I think from 5 years ago, the world had changed considerably. You can go and shop for certain functionality, right? The way technology works is that you can integrate platforms. And so if you spent a lot of money, and you know, I have certain clients who have, they've invested huge amounts of time and money into their platforms, and those costs have not yet been realized. They may want to leverage a couple of different tools within technology providers' toolkit, right? Whether that's the virtual goodie bag, or it's, you know, on-site check-in tools to sort out expos, or mobile applications, and so on. You know, there's I'm going blank obviously because I've put myself under pressure, but there are. I don't think there necessarily has to be that. Now I have to change provider right now. You've got to worry about your business right now. Get money in, get consumers out on the road. Don't make it, you know, speak to any financial advisor. Don't make any quick decisions right now based on fear, right? If you are still planning on doing a technology review, do your technology review and give all of us a call. But at the same time, focus on what matters most, which is your top line as well as your bottom line. That's what I would advise. Pierre?
Totally agree with you, Toby. I couldn't agree more. Honestly, it's, you've got to stay focused on your business at the moment. And we live in a world where you can always integrate with a third party, APIs are all around the place. So you can always find a solution. Actually, what's funny is that, you're saying, Toby, about, taking some time and being patient. It's not the moment to invest or stuff, makes me think about the virtual races, which is a topic that we put it on the list. And Matt and I had a quick chat about it yesterday. And actually, I'm going to say something that a lot of people whisper in the industry, is that we're not there yet with virtual races, And while it's a good hot fix, like if it was an IT, thing, we would call this a hot fix to keep people engaged. We're not quite there yet. So this is a good example of not rushing into anything. Actually, making sure your participants are refunded. That's another feature that we will talk about in the finance piece, But these stuff's on now, and just not try to do some complex virtual races and stuff like that, I think,
Yeah.
What's your opinion?
It makes sense, and we talked about that a lot on the virtual racing call, wasn't it? Is that it's probably part of your mix as opposed to a replacement, which some people are seeing it at the moment. Opportunity to build engagement on an ongoing basis, and it's maybe part of the journey. You just mentioned entry fees, refunds, whatever. We're going to talk about that with maybe in terms of tools and measures, but we've spoken about price elasticity. I'll get it out eventually. I'm going to launch a poll just to get a sense here of what people are thinking in terms of their entry fees. But I'd love to maybe let's stay with you there, Pierre. What are you seeing in terms of entry fees? How important is the role of the platform in terms of helping with modeling and so on around entry fees as we move forward?
So we're among friends here and people of the industry. So there is a big difference between North America or the Americas, Europe and Southeast Asia and Australia in terms of pricing. Like a marathon in Europe would be 3 times cheaper than it would be in North America on average. So I can only speak for what I know best, which is, Europe. I'd say it's a great opportunity to raise the price because the level of quality that events put together is too cheap, and people don't realize it because sports in Europe was highly financed by public fundings, and that era is over. Governments don't have any more money to pour into sports, so you have to work on your own. Sponsors are more and more challenging events. Everybody knows that. So I'd say it's a great opportunity, at least in Europe, to raise the price to a decent amount. I'm not saying you need to double your price or anything, but a couple extra euros or pounds will make a huge difference on the bottom line of events, especially because of COVID-19. There will be, health management costs, that will come, in your budget now. You've got to expect that, unfortunately. So if you increase your price, I think people will understand, and that will help everybody. And you can also do that for another reason, is that I believe that some events will disappear, unfortunately. Some events are really struggling. Mid-sized events are really struggling at the moment. So, there will be less, the offer will be, there will be less events in the calendar. So it's okay if people pay a little more to get a fantastic experience, I think, I don't know how you guys think about, your areas, and if you see the same trends or not, but I'll be interested to.
I'll just pop the poll in there, and very few people think that they're going to increase their entry fees. But interesting. Carry on, Matt. Toby, what's your sense there?
Look, in Australia, I think that we have been at the high end of the entry fees, I believe, for a couple of years, and there's lots of very interesting conversations happening at the moment around everyone is expecting to be able to have less people at an event, and is the demand going to be there to be able to bump prices up to cover the additional cost, or at least to get to a break-even point of what entry fees were previously? That I think it's a bigger question at the moment, at least in the short term, because we're living in a world at the moment where in the next 6 months, where there's all these events that are still planned to happen, we're also on top of those 6 months, those events that normally happen in that period, we have a whole lot of events from Q2 that have been pushed and delayed and postponed into that period of time, of people who've already paid for entry fees prior to this point as well. And so the saturation of events during the back half of 2020 and the early part of 2021 is going to be so significant that I totally agree with Pierre. There's going to be a lot less events because unfortunately there's not going to be enough people, enough entry fees to go around to keep all the same amount of events going as there was previously. And
going to be, yeah, you're right.
Yeah, and hopefully that people are willing to actually get out and participate in events with lots of people around as well. But I think we're still yet to see, and again, it's different in different parts of the world already, but still yet to see people's willingness to actually be in a big crowd of, am I willing to go and stand on a start line with 10,000 other people before an event, or is it going to be a long time until people are actually willing to do that? That it's a really interesting conversation at the moment around what the pricing is going to look like and what the volume of participants is going to look like versus the increased volume number of events that are planned at the moment.
Yeah. I mean,
interesting. Toby, your thoughts?
Yeah, look, having spoken to a number of organisers around the world, I think the Australian market is top end, and the Europe and UK market is bottom. It couldn't be more. There couldn't be more of a disparity. The European market needs to increase their prices, without a doubt. They just won't be able to operate at any form of operating margin, given the increased costs from a health and safety standpoint. European laws and legislations will undoubtedly come, as well as UK laws. It's more the legislation and the regulations in the United States are very different and less stringent. I still think the US market has much greater levels of price variance, and I think that provides an opportunity for organisers who are potentially forecasting a struggle to review their pricing. And I think consumers will understand, right? We work with people who are incredibly passionate, who are mission driven, who have specific end goals, and I think there is a requirement for the organisers to communicate with their audience why there has been a $5, €5, £5 increase, and put it clearly on the website or wherever you are communicating, that you are trying to operate and employ people, etc., etc. It's going to be tough. I mean, as we know, the laws, the world in which we live in means that nobody can collude. We'll all go to jail. I wish that was available. I mean, we're trying to do some analysis on past price elasticity variances, but it is very difficult to then release information that sort of says, okay, organizer A, you should do this. I mean, the UK market in particular is anchored by one particular event, which is priced incredibly low. And I think, if you're from the UK or European market, be brave, communicate. You have to put these events on next year and get people back out on the streets and in the fields. And you need to operate profitably. So it's going to be tough, but I think communication is key.
So it's interesting. I mean, the potential events disappearing, calendar clutter. Anecdotally, all over the world, we're seeing this massive growth in people running. Just from a recreational training perspective, potentially those transfer back into the industry, and maybe we have bigger numbers. I'm less and less sticking my neck out there, concerned about people's concern for standing on start lines. The stuff that I'm seeing in communities anecdotally, the example, obviously New Zealand's a very safe haven at the moment, but within a couple of weeks they just sold 35,000 tickets for a football match on Sunday. And the stuff I'm seeing anecdotally in day-to-day life around the world, with beaches being open and people cramming in and shopping centers and stuff. 6 weeks ago on our weekly calls, we were talking about, the participants are going to be terrified. I hope I'm not proven wrong, but I'm less inclined to believe that's an issue. I think there's this massive pent-up demand, but it's going to be a matter of, someone says consumer confidence is key, and this is also, I guess, talking about register money and get it back. I think there's going to be obviously the safety element of it, but let me read that question now. I kind of guess it partly relates to it. Consumer confidence is key. How can platforms give consumer confidence that if they register, their money is safe if an event is cancelled or an event organizer no longer exists? Again, is that the platform's responsibility, or is it the organizer's responsibility? Who'd like to tackle that one?
I can. I'll take it from our point of view. So, we are a B2B service provider, and we have a relationship with consumers, and the fact that we process their data and on behalf of process the data, we process their money on behalf of event organizers. I think there's going to be some changes in the back end around how that operates in the coming years. I think we'll probably look at how we run our businesses. No short-term changes. I don't think that will affect consumers, and I don't think they'll see really how that works. We have seen some payment processing businesses, and I won't name them as they are either public or going public. Not given this is going out to the market, refuse to do business with the events industry because of the notion that you are purchasing a product now for something that is going to be provided at a future date. And so that brings certain risk to that particular processor. That's not us, by the way. I think it's a dual responsibility. We need to do our KYC on event organizers. We have increased the level of analysis that we do when onboarding clients. We have had very, very constructive conversations with all of our top organizers around the health of their business, around talking about their balance sheet, their cash flow, their business plan over the next 12 to 18 months. And it's been fantastic, the amount of transparency coming back from organizers. And that's helped us manage our risk and then the potential risk that may be exposed to consumers. Talking about the future, we're asking, and actually the industry is already updating their terms and conditions. They're offering fully refundable tickets. We used to work with a third party, but we released our own refund protection product last year that we actually paused during COVID, and we'll be releasing back into the industry as we get through some legal nuances. So it's a combination of responsibilities. We will be doing our KYC on our clients. Our clients are responsible for delivering a solution to you. Hopefully that provides some form of answer. Pierre, Matt, what are you guys doing in addition or differently?
You want to go, Matt?
Yeah, sure. Look, similar to what you're saying, look, I think this is a really misunderstood piece around the liability of an event not being delivered and where the refund lies. And ultimately it lies at the event organizer. But I think the big event organizers and the professional event organizers understand this, but there's a lot of low and mid-tier event organizers who don't understand that if they don't actually deliver the event, they're liable to actually provide a refund back to the consumer. And that's pretty much reflected in nearly every part of the world, is that if you buy a ticket to an event and you don't put the event on, then that person is entitled to get their money back. Regardless of the reason. And I think even last week during your conversation with the insurance companies, Chris, basically all saying that regardless, that none of them are going to cover a pandemic and cover giving everyone all the participants their money back if there's a pandemic and the event's cancelled. So it comes back to the event organizer, but as a platform, similar to what Toby was saying. We've been working very closely with our event organisers to understand what their policies are going forward, what their policies, how they need to change and update their policies going forward, and making sure that they understand what their risk is going forward. And in terms of looking back to the original question around consumer confidence, I think I totally agree that people or event organisers who are willing to understand that risk and to either plan for it, insure for it, or have a policy around what that looks like in terms of people getting the money back if an event is cancelled for COVID-19. I think they're the ones who are going to be successful in the short term in getting registrations faster than probably some of the other platforms. Oh, sorry, some of the other events.
Yeah, absolutely right.
Pierre, why don't we flick in to because I think it's, time's ticking away, and I think engagement is one of the areas which I'm sure many people out there are interested to talk about. CRM, marketing automation, all those elements of it, because it's obviously going to be a really key element. And unless you've got a burning thing that you want to add about the pricing side of things, we spent a bit of time on it. Why don't we move on and start talking a little bit more about CRM and engagement?
Right before we jump into the CRM, about the refund and the question consumer confidence, KYC is fundamental. Each country has its own country regulations, so what is the regulations in place in the countries. And on the other end, in terms of features you could expect from your registration system, you've got all the banking agreements and licenses to be able to process money from third parties. That's fundamental. Well, good news, the three companies here are, regulated, and they're doing a great job because the money that we process does not belong to us. That's fundamental, and I think it's important to mention that to the audience today. And there are also solutions to support participants. We have implemented rolling reserves on some events where we have doubts in terms of KYCs, and so we tell them that we'll keep a rolling reserve just in case their participants request. And you can also, what we've also done is we are now requesting every single customer to provide, I mean by that events, to provide with a payment method, so a credit card or a bank transfer agreement, so that if we have to process refunds because the country regulations are forcing this, we have the potential to do it, And for example, we had the case in Austria, the government forced an event to refund more than what they were thinking of refunding, and we were capable of addressing this one. But because it was enforced by the government, it was a massive deal during COVID-19 that we had to deal with. So your registration platform can support you in these very unusual cases. So now back into the CRM piece. It's people keep talking about that all the time. Sometimes it's even hard to understand what a CRM is supposed to do for events. Our take at njuko is that it should allow you to profile your athletes and engage in a personalized way from the moment they register, up to after the event. So these are the features that you should look into. What do you have in your system that can help you profile your athletes and create what we call different stories? I keep telling events that from where I sit, you take whatever marathon with 20, 30,000 people, it's actually not just one profile of athlete. There are actually a lot of different communities within this event. And your CRM should allow you to create stories, experiences for each of these different communities. I don't know what you think, guys, but I think that is fundamental for today and tomorrow.
Absolutely. I think we have all been overloaded with digital information in the last 4 months. We've seen human consumption of social media go through the roof, as well as email. I think email read rates and open rates also go through the roof on the whole. But what we do know about human psychology is that people like to consume information in bite size. And so if it is in the written word, it needs to be short and sweet, because we are all incredibly distracted. You just need to look at your iPhone and look at the number of screen hours you're all doing each day. It's horrifying. And so, CRM is a strategy. It's not a tool. There are a bunch of tools within all of our platforms, I believe, that allow you to execute a customer relationship driven strategy. And so, I encourage everybody out there to take a step back and go, okay, well, as Pierre said, we've got different communities, community A, B, C, and D. And let's just say we have one that is a new customer. Somebody has never engaged with my brand before, and somebody who's engaged with my brand before, my events. And so you can give them different tracks. Am I going to send them 7 emails between point of registration and the point of the event, or am I going to send them 3? And what are those 3 emails going to send? And you should be able to set it and forget it, right? And that communication can be both email, digital, social, etc. And in an environment where we have seen businesses like Shopify's usage go through the roof, that indicates people are leveraging e-commerce to bring money into their business. And we've seen that in the events industry and the mass participation space. And so you're going to need to have a think about, okay, which segments or communities of my 5,000, 10,000, 1,000 registrations are going to want to purchase a product from me. And am I a female or am I a male? You have different purchasing patterns, and CRM doesn't need to be overly complicated. And I think for the last 3 years, the industry has been very excited about embracing this strategy. But if you have a bit of time, take back and think, okay, well, what can I do as a step 1? What am I going to do in 2020? And what am I going to do in 2021? And as Pierre says, it's about customized, segmented, specific communications, and in my view, in bite size, whether that is written word, video, GIFs, imagery, etc.
And so the role of the platform in that is you already have tools to support that, but it's a matter of dovetailing that with some other tools that the organizers might be using, or how does the platform play a role in helping to support that?
I think all of our platforms do have those capabilities, but if there is a specific capability, I think the key is going forward is that you can use whatever tool you want, and you should be able to link your data to that tool. So yeah, so no longer will be thinking about CRM, I think, as a single piece of software. Yeah. I think CRM will be a group of pieces of software that you'll use together to make sure that you're getting the right message to the right person at the right time in the way that they want to hear that message. And I think totally agree with Toby, bite-sized messaging is going to be the future. It no longer will be the effective email of an event organizer sending out an email which is scrollable for 10 sort of pages where no one reads past the first subject line. So bite-sized messaging to the right person at the right time, not just in the sales process, but also in the lead up to the event, and especially as things are changing potentially around COVID-19 and new information and new things changing about an event, that small pieces of information that is consumable by the participant at the right time is going to be key.
Okay. Pierre, anything more to add on that?
No, just reading at one of John's comments in the chat box. Very interesting conversation, guys. Is there any segments in software to manage medical contacts at events to know who gave out bibs, etc.? I would say, of course, you should be able to segmentate these specific type of data or type of people. But because there's the word medical, I want to bring your attention, John, on the fact that storing medical records requires some kind of specific agreements in some areas. I know I can mostly speak about Europe, but medical data in Europe are, very, how would you say that? Not restricted, but I don't know what the word.
Sensitive.
Sensitive, thank you. So you've got to have dedicated servers for that and stuff like that. So you got to be careful. That could become very expensive. If it's contact details of people, there shouldn't be any problem, I think, you know. So it should be totally fine.
I think I can add some context to that. I think we all have access control or check-in style solutions within our portfolio. So often legacy operators think of registration businesses as just processing a registration and payment, then off to the races. The world has expanded since then, and
that was 1999.
and we all have iPhones and iPads and check-in tools. And so, John, to answer your question, a lot of our customers leverage one of our tools, and that check-in or on-site application allows you as the event organizer to say, okay, here, Chris Robb, this is your iPad, it's labeled to Chris Robb, and you can do this, and you can just check in somebody. And Matt, this is your iPad, and you can give somebody the bib. And the great thing about digital access control is obviously it records the timestamp in which I'm checking somebody in or giving them a bib, or I'm going to the packet pickup, or I'm doing the car parking pass. It's all connected back to one barcode, which was your original registration. And then you can go into the back end of your system and look at a report, and you can actually see visually a flow of, okay, this was my check-in flow over the course of 12 hours. So you may get it almost right in your first event. You go, okay, it did feel a bit busy in that 12 to 1 o'clock period. What do I need to do with my weekend, my race next weekend? And so, those tools can now manage waivers. You can do digital signatures. You can now even do selfie signatures with a lot of these tools. Now, again, as Pierre mentions, you need to abide by the regulations, the privacy regulations of your specific country. If you don't know that, whilst none of us are lawyers, we've all built platforms that are privacy compliant to our specific jurisdictions. So, John, I think my answer is there's probably already tools in your toolkit out there. Go have a chat with your team, whether it's medical or non-medical. Matt?
I think you've answered it. I think the only thing to add to that is more of a philosophical question about what check-in and bid pickup will look like in the future, and how that potentially might change in terms of a lot of event organizers in Australia, for example, are talking about everything will have to be posted out prior to an event, so you don't even have bib check-in and stuff at an event anymore. There's going to be some really interesting live changes happening over the next 6 months, 12 months, 2 years around how that potentially looks. And if you take away the expo for a big city marathon, then how do you actually manage that big distribution process as well? So I think that they're all, I don't have an answer to what that is. I think there's so many conversations happening at the moment around that, but totally agree with everything that you guys have said, that the tools are already there to do that. But it's the bigger question, I think, is what is it actually going to look like in 6 months, 12 months time? I don't know if we know.
I don't think we know, and it's going to evolve obviously case by case and market by market. But I mean, picking up on a comment that came up a couple of weeks ago, I forget which session it was in, but I think there's going to need to be a degree of flexibility in terms of bib exchange with event organizers. There's in most instances there's this non-changeable, non-refundable. You miss out, you miss out. If we're going to tracking of people again in different markets, this is going to vary. But at the end of the day, Pierre registers and he has no facility to be able to legitimately exchange that. It's already risky in these days that Pierre passes it to Toby, and Toby has a heart attack, and we got Pierre's details in the system. It now becomes even more important to be able to, I believe, to be able to facilitate a bib exchange process, because Pierre passes his thing to Toby. Toby's infected with coronavirus, and Pierre says, "Well, I wasn't there," and you end up with. I don't need to go through the details of that, but I think it's going to be something that savvy event organizers are going to have to have a much more flexible bib exchange policy. I know the guys from, not sure if they're on the call tonight, but the guys from Fresh Events up in Malaysia have actually developed a marketplace, and Pierre indicated that I think there's someone in France who has a similar thing where people can legitimately exchange their bibs, and I think that will ultimately become a new norm as we need to engage and provide more services to customers.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, registration transfers, whether it's to someone you already know or you just want to hand out your bib into a bucket where anyone can come in and buy it from you, is something that your registration company should be able to provide you with. It's fundamental. In today's world, it's fundamental. Whether you're a small event or a large event, you'll always need, these transfer capabilities, always. Definitely.
Thanks, guys. Why don't we move on and talk about things around financial tools and measures, and maybe just kind of bucket that with sort of third-party involvement as well. So, the extra services, reassurance, insurance, we've touched on a little bit. Charities, obviously, increasingly, the interaction and engagement with charities. There's a question from Mark Friedweller. Hi, Mark. What are your thoughts on the future of registration and fundraising, and two, on charities pulling demand for registrations? So maybe that's a fairly big bucket, but maybe weave it in terms of third party. There's more and more plugins in terms of insurance and charities and all that. But in terms of the tools, we've heard so often tonight, there's so many tools in the basket already that many people aren't using. But maybe use that as a segue around that to come to the financial tools and measures, which is obviously going to be quite important to people in these tight times. Who wants to take that one?
Measures, I'd say, yeah, mass refund is a key feature. You need to be able to process mass refunds for everybody at once. I don't know if everybody's doing it, but I think it's fundamental. There's a couple of things that lies behind this is, your registration platform needs to have the funds and so forth, but I think this is fundamental. In terms of insurance, we talked about this. I think there's a great initiative in the US, a couple events, I'm sorry, I can't remember the names, but a couple events are offering fully guaranteed registration for any reason. And I think in order to do that, they're using either event ticketing insurance, so they're insuring the entire revenue of, the registration's revenue to an insurance company, or they are offering an option to the athlete to get a full refund. So we know that with pandemic, it's a tight one if you push that down to your participants. But insurances can play a big part. I believe that in some ways, some events will have to go through that offering. Like, I'm guaranteeing you that you get a full refund if the event has to be canceled for XYZ reason. And I don't know what you guys think, but I know it's a tricky one.
I think there's some debate amongst organizers worldwide on how to facilitate that, right? Do they self-insure, right, by providing option A, a fully refundable ticket, option B, a non-refundable ticket? We've seen that, and I think that's what you're referring to with the organizers around the world. There are products out there, as I mentioned. We moved from a third party to doing it ourselves. That doesn't necessarily. Third parties actually are great. I think some of them may be on the phone. And I think that's going to be very, very important to be able to offer that airline style protection product at the point of purchase or before the point of purchase, allowing consumers the choice to make an educated decision based on their risk appetite and their understanding of what's going on in the world at present. And it comes back to I believe our entire industry needs to communicate with their audience on the costliness of putting on events, and that putting on an event for 40 euros is challenging to make any form of margin without governmental or partner support. And there is not a lot of, if you look at the share prices, even in a market that's rebounded, of the large apparel brands, they're not doing very well. And we still have Q2 reports to come out worldwide. And so, coming back to the original question, I think insurance or ticket protection or some form of offer needs to be part of your strategy, whether that's self, partner, registration provider, or third party. With respect to mass refunds, we didn't have a mass refund at the beginning of the pandemic. We had a big client cancel, and we rushed very quickly to build a mass refunding script to allow our clients worldwide to do this. But you bring up a good point, right? That the money has to be in our account before we can process those refunds, and so that's been a challenge, right? There's a lot of accounting legwork that goes on behind. So not complicated points, but thoughtful points that I encourage you all to call your providers or call Chris and any of us to have a chat. Matt?
Yeah, I cringed at the bulk refund discussion. I wouldn't consider us the biggest by any means registration provider, but the last couple of months doing bulk refunds for events of 20,000 people has been a significant learning experience, one that hopefully we never have to go through again. Look, the insurance part of it is a really interesting discussion, and I think there's a lot of this that you covered last week as well, Chris, on the last week of the week before on the insurance discussion as well, around the ticket protection side of things. And I think it's really important to distinguish between a registration protection insurance or a change of mind policy versus a COVID pandemic policy as well. And I think that there is a lot of noise around those refund protection insurance, and there's a lot that still is not going to get covered for a pandemic. And I think it loops, all of these discussions we're having are all intertwined around the event policy and around the consumer confidence, building that consumer confidence. And I think event registration insurance is a great way to build consumer confidence. But in this current market where we are at the moment, where the most likely thing is that an event is pushed or cancelled or changed to a date that you can't attend, are you actually going to get your money back? Is that, do I have the confidence to actually purchase right now, to the confidence to make that purchase knowing that I'm covered? And I think there's a lot of parts to that discussion which haven't been tied together effectively yet.
Yeah, totally right. And that comes down to the terms and conditions, actually. I mean,
yeah, it all falls back to the event organizer. Yeah,
you can, as an event, you can probably protect yourself by putting things clearly in the terms and conditions. And I urge every single event director out there today to look at their terms and conditions. Sometimes we take them for granted and we forget about these key components. What do you refund? When will you refund? Until what date you will process a refund? These are fundamental things that I'm sure you guys are looking at, but it's worth, having a look at it with, insurance companies as well, from now on, and see what you can insure and, to what respect.
With the limited number of events taking reasonable number of registrations, we've seen some customers worldwide create multiple tiers of terms and conditions, i.e. the terms and conditions you sign up to at the point of purchase, and then a need for somebody to come back and acknowledge and sign a COVID-19 terms and conditions or something else, either in their participant portal, which is linked to the client's the event director's website, or on site at the check-in. Terms and conditions and review of that is going to be critical. So take the time to get some legal advice. That's very, very important. And Matt, you just very quickly, I know we're running long on time, but For those of you in the UK, I was notified by my team over there that the UK government has designated coronavirus COVID-19 as a notifiable disease, which does give businesses or event directors some hope that their previous insurance cover may respond to some coronavirus-related losses. So
great
interesting
news.
Interesting to see how governments are reacting. I'm sure insurance providers are livid, but it's very important, right? Because that's what they're there for, and it could actually help provide some reassurance and some underlying funding to the industry. So, get out there, do some research on your government websites, call your providers, because we are looking at everything, trying to make sure that this industry gets back on their feet. But Chris, back to you.
Thank you. Many great points, and as you say, we're out of time. In fact, we're a couple of minutes over. So, just going to pick up a couple of key points. And I think one of the repeated things that keeps coming is there's a lot of tools that already exist. It's not a matter of going and recreating things. There's tools there. Talk to your provider, whoever they are, and even if you run your own system, it's an opportunity to plug in maybe to some of the service that are provided. It's multi-tiered. It's stacks of technology, opportunities to increase entry fees, particularly in Europe, albeit that communication is going to be key. The whole refund thing, it needs to be a part of your strategy. You need to understand the rules of engagement, so to speak. Needs to be built in one way or another. A real opportunity in terms of leveraging what exists from an e-commerce perspective. So, creating personas around your different participants in your database and understanding which ones you might be able to generate e-commerce for, as we're going to be looking for extra revenue streams out of that. And then, the last one at the end there, the real importance of terms and conditions, understanding, what liability people are signing up for, how well you're covered. Again, getting legal advice, but, lots of these type of companies, in terms of the bigger players that we have here, have a lot of information on that. Ask the question. One of the themes that's come out almost every week is the opportunity that this is presenting the industry to relook at every element of it, whether it be operational, whether it be volunteers, and here is an opportunity as well to relook at your terms and conditions, your insurances, everything that you have around it. We've got a couple, there's still 60 people on the call. We've got a couple of questions. If it's okay, given that those that want to drop off have got a summary, why don't we just jump into a couple of questions and comments. Yeah, you're absolutely right, Dave Budge. I need a beard. I don't meet the panel, so I'll need to start growing a beard very fast by next week, hopefully. Andy Mitchelton, there seems to be so much time and thought going into the appropriate separation of customers during race pack collection, in-start assembly areas, and post-event. This is all good, but the organizer has little or no control as soon as the runner crosses the start line, or of the potentially thousands of spectators who will stand on the side of the race route. Are we overthinking and over-planning when the bulk of the event will see participants have to self-manage as they complete the race distance? Look, I think it's a great point, Andy, and I think what we need to be doing is showing plans at every stage. This is a common theme that's coming through. We've had Marcel Altenberg, crowd scientist who was on our social distancing, talking about the Bundesliga had 10 different plans that they took to the German government, and they tweaked those and massaged them, and they eventually got back to play. I think over-planning, over-strategizing at this stage with a view that you've got an opportunity to satisfy different government agencies, licensing agencies, that you've thought of all of those potentials and then come to some kind of a compromise without going there. I mean, the reality, as I mentioned a few times and I've shared a number of times over the week, I see so much happening in everyday life, in my opinion, that is more risky than participating in a mass participation event. The reality is that the perception at the moment is that mass events, whether they be a mass participation event, a music concert, or a people going to a mosque or a church, there's all different elements there. We're being bundled into all of those, and the onus is on us to come up with plans that is going to give us the best opportunity to satisfy licensing, permitting agents that we have things under control. And I think at this stage, the more detailed plan, the reality is absolutely, you see, there were the pictures of queues in people in England, beautiful sunny sunny weekend last weekend, queuing in the car parks of hardware stores, but the minute the doors were open, it was like the Christmas shopping frenzy, and they were leaning all over each other. So, I really think that we need to just put in as many plans as possible, and then understand that, that it is in the hands of the participant. Quickly, Adam O'Connor, I wondered what thoughts are around using virtuals for data collection to encourage new markets to enter. Your real life events could be good for 2021. I see this tactic as good now, whilst a lot of virtual runs are diluting the market. Look, why don't we throw that to the panel? I think absolutely. My sense is that they're part of the mix. But any quick comments on those before we wrap it up?
Adam, it's great to hear from you again. It's been a while, and great question, Nick. I hope my peers would think the same. I think virtual is here to stay as a form, but as part of the physical event. And there are going to be some consumers, participants out there who are fearful but want to participate, who this is their lifestyle, and we have to account for everybody's personalities, their feelings, and their fears. And so I think this is an opportunity for event organizers to bridge the gap and have a hybrid model for forever, and to acquire adjacent revenue streams, and to utilize virtual as a training tool right up to the physical event, or as an adjacent tool at the event. Data is key at every stage of the game. So whether it's virtual or physical, I agree. I mean, you should be reviewing what your communities and segments look like. We feel that virtual is here to stay, whether it's a single run or a challenge event or a distance event. We've got some fantastic, as I know you guys do, organizers who've been doing this for years. This isn't new. It has become oversaturated, that's for sure. And thus, the people that will survive in the virtual space are the innovators who provide real value, both in a digital and a physical form. This isn't just a bring the cash in quick solution. You have to think carefully and considerately about bringing value to consumers. And that goes with every walk of business. Thanks, Toby. Any final comments, Pierre?
I agree. It has to be part of your mix. Last comment on virtual races is that there is a key word in virtual races. It's virtual, and today to do something virtual that makes sense, you need to have a good tech. The offerings out there are not very techy. It's what's out there is not amazing. And as a racer, I haven't found a single challenge yet that I would be keen to sign up for. So I might be old school on that end, but making these two worlds work together is a challenge, something that we've been, thinking a lot about at njuko. We've got a couple projects going on, but honestly, I think they will be part of the mix, but we're definitely not there yet. Thank you. Matt, anything from you, virtual or otherwise? Just a final say?
I think the virtuals, I agree with Toby and with Pierre. I think that they'll be around forever. I think that right now, to answer Adam's question, it's a great way to collect data to market to people in the future. But I think it'll be part of the mix. I don't think it's going to be a huge key part going forward, because this whole industry has been built on the experience. There's nothing quite like the experience of standing on a start line with 10,000 people looking around with that nervous energy of going, have I done enough training? I'm in this together. Mm-hmm. Running along the course and looking beside someone and running with that person you've never met before and experience that elation of getting through the event and getting across the finish line. And that's what mass participation is really built on. I think virtual is a necessity at the moment, and totally agree, we're completely oversaturated. Great for collecting data at the moment, but once events are allowed to happen again, I think it'll be part of the mix, but I don't think it's going to be I don't think it'll compare to the numbers that you'll get of people wanting to be part of that feeling again of actually participating. Yeah, totally agree. Guys, just a quick couple of wraps here. I will be back next week with a beard. I'm going to have to take some tips from Matt as to how quickly to grow it. Next week, a reminder that we'll be bringing together many of the alliances and coalitions from around the world to share what they're doing and their knowledge. And then also Strength in Numbers on Monday afternoon at 4:30 Singapore time.
If you can't find the details, so just email me, chris@chrisrobb.asia, or at any stage if I can help you with anything along the way. A couple of other comments. Dermot Brennan from Ireland, who's attended a lot of these. Thank you, Chris, Matt, Toby, and Pierre. This is one of the best webinars I attended. So many great ideas. Lots of other good feedback there. So thank you so much to Matt in Australia. It's pretty late for you now, Matt. You've got 3 young kids that are going to be waking you in the morning, so we'll let you get off to bed. Pierre, time to get back on the surfboard. Thank you so much for your time. Toby, have a great day. You've got the whole day ahead of you. Really appreciate all the feedback. Thanks to all of you that tuned in, and look forward to seeing many of you next Thursday night. Have a great week ahead and weekend. Bye-bye, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. Bye, everyone.
Thanks, guys.